Imagine a future where, expert medical insight isn't just stuck in specialized hospitals,
Hmm.
where it can be accessed pretty much anywhere, helping doctors make those really critical decisions and, well, expanding quality healthcare for everyone. That's the huge potential AI holds for medicine. But here's the core challenge we're really diving into today. Real-world medical diagnosis. It's far from a simple multiple choice question. It's dynamic, it's iterative, full of twists and turns, you know, where every new piece of information kind of refines the path forward. It's a complex puzzle. Definitely not some static problem you solve just once.
Exactly. And because it is so complex, the traditional ways we've evaluated AI, like static scenarios or standardized exams, they really fall short. They just don't capture how doctors actually think and adapt in practice. So those evaluations can, well, they can often overstate an AI model's true capabilities and miss some crucial weaknesses.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore some really groundbreaking research coming out of Microsoft AI that's pushing the boundaries of AI-driven diagnosis. They're making it far more realistic and more effective than, well, pretty much anything we've seen before. We'll unpack exactly what that means for the future of your healthcare. Okay, let's get into it. So real medical diagnosis, what's often called sequential diagnosis, it's really at the very heart of how doctors reason clinically. It's basically a detective story, right? You start with limited initial clues, then you iteratively ask more questions, order specific tests, and you're constantly refining your hypotheses as new information comes in. Think about a seasoned diagnostician. They might begin with broad questions to understand symptoms, then progressively narrow things down, maybe ordering an MRI or a biopsy later on. And each step is this careful balancing act, weighing the potential diagnostic yield like what vital new info you might get against the cost, and just as importantly, the burden on the patient.
hmm And what's truly illuminating here is why those traditional benchmarks, like a lot of medical licensing exams, are just insufficient for really evaluating this dynamic process. They present AI models with what are essentially these uh, neatly packaged vignettes and ask for just a single one-turn answer. This approach, honestly, it risks overstating model competence because it doesn't expose critical weaknesses. And AI might jump to a conclusion too early that something we call premature diagnostic closure, or it might just indiscriminately order every test under the sun without thinking about necessity or cost. This static evaluation completely misses the core of medical practice, how doctors adapt each subsequent question and test to what they've just learned. It's a constant feedback loop.
Okay, so the crucial first hurdle for these researchers was figuring out how do you even test an AI like a real doctor? You can't just give it a multiple choice quiz. That's where they built something really innovative, the first big step in this research, creating a benchmark that genuinely mimics this real-world sequential diagnostic process. To do this, the researchers unveiled something called the Sequential Diagnosis Benchmark, or SDBench. Now, this impressive benchmark transforms 304 diagnostically challenging cases from the New England Journal of Medicine's Clinico-Pathological Conference Series, the NEJM CPCs, specifically from 2017 to 2025, into these stepwise interactive diagnostic encounters. It's kind of like turning a static medical textbook case into a living, breathing simulation. So a diagnostic agent, whether it's human or AI, starts with just a short initial abstract, like a 29-year-old woman was admitted, sore throat and peritonsillar swelling and bleeding. Symptoms did not abate with antimicrobial therapy. And from that brief starting point, the agent has to iteratively request additional details, just like a doctor would in a real consultation.
And that iterative process is absolutely key for realism. The agent basically has three core actions it can take at each step. First, it can ask questions. These are free text queries for more history or examination details, things like, has she traveled recently? Second, it can request diagnostic tests, which are explicit orders for labs, imaging, specific procedures, maybe order a CT chest with contrast. And finally, when it feels confident enough, it can diagnose, making that one-time commitment to a final diagnosis. Now, a crucial technical piece of SDBench is the gatekeeper agent. This is implemented using a language model called a 4-mini, and this gatekeeper acts as an oracle to the patient case. It's designed so it only reveals specific findings when it's explicitly asked by the diagnostic agent. This prevents any, unintentional spoilers.
Right, and here's where the technical brilliance really shines through. This gatekeeper agent can actually synthesize realistic findings for tests that weren't even originally detailed in the NEJM case, which is a really clever solution because it actively stops the diagnostic AI from getting spoilers or these implicit clues that just wouldn't exist in a real clinical encounter. It maintains that critical realism of the simulation.
Exactly. Then, once a diagnosis is proposed, the judge agent steps in. This uses the O3 language model, and this AI evaluates the proposed diagnosis against the actual ground truth NEJM diagnosis using a pretty detailed physician-authored 5-point Likert rubric. You can think of this rubric like a quality scale, where medical experts scored the diagnosis from 1 to 5 on things like the core disease, its cause, the specific anatomic site, how specific the diagnosis is, and its overall completeness. A score of 4 or higher counts as correct.
Okay, got it. And finally, there's the cost estimator. This system is designed to introduce those real-world financial constraints. It assigns a fixed cost, $300 per physician visit, and importantly, multiple questions count as just one visit. And here's the clever bit. It uses another language model-based lookup system to translate the AI's free text test requests into standard CPT codes. Those are basically the universal identifiers for medical procedures. So the system can then match them to 2023 U.S. health system pricing data, giving a remarkably realistic cost estimate.
And this raises an important question. Why even include cost?
Right.
Well, it's fundamentally there to deter those unrealistic diagnostic behaviors, like an AI just ordering every expensive test available without thinking. This lines up perfectly with the triple aim in healthcare, which is all about delivering high-quality care at a sustainable cost, impacting more lives per dollar spent. It adds a really crucial layer of real-world decision-making and constraint for the AI.
Okay, so with the complex challenge clearly defined and a realistic evaluation benchmark now in place, the next step was to build an AI system truly capable of tackling this complexity. And that's where the MAI Diagnostic Orchestrator, or MAI-DxO, comes in. You can think of it as a model agnostic orchestrator that was co-designed with physicians, essentially, a digital conductor for a virtual panel of expert doctors.
Yeah, the technical brilliance behind this orchestration is, it's pretty impressive. It actually allows a single underlying language model to role-play 5 distinct medical personas, and they all work collaboratively to solve a single case. This setup directly replicates the benefits of team-based clinical reasoning, letting the AI mitigate common individual cognitive biases while at the same time minimizing diagnostic costs.
Okay, let's pull up a chair and meet this virtual medical dream team, because each doctor on this panel has a crucial and distinct role in the whole diagnostic process. First up, we have Dr. Hypothesis. This persona is constantly working, maintaining, and updating a probability-ranked list of potential diagnoses, usually keeping track of the top 3 most likely conditions based on all the new info gathered. Then there's Dr. Test Chooser. Their job is to select up to 3 diagnostic tests per round. But crucially, their goal isn't just ordering tests randomly, but finding the ones that best discriminate between those leading hypotheses, helping to narrow down the possibilities efficiently and, purposefully.
Smart.
Next up, we have Dr. Challenger. This one is fascinating. Dr. Challenger acts as a kind of devil's advocate, specifically designed to spot potential anchoring bias, where the AI might get stuck on an initial idea and highlights any evidence that contradicts it. Dr. Challenger also proposes tests that could actively disprove the current leading diagnosis, forcing a more rigorous, more skeptical evaluation.
That's interesting, like built-in quality control for the thinking process itself.
Exactly. Then we also have Dr. Stewardship, who's basically the team's conscience on cost-conscious care. This persona advocates for cheaper alternatives when they're diagnostically just as good, and isn't afraid to veto low-yield, expensive tests, making sure resources are used responsibly.
Very important in the real world.
And finally, Dr. Checklist. This persona performs silent, kind of behind-the-scenes quality control. They make sure the AI generates valid test names and maintains internal consistency across the entire panel's reasoning process, ensuring everything is logically sound.
So working together, this virtual panel reaches a consensus. Should we ask more questions, order more tests, or commit to a final diagnosis if they're certain enough? They even have an optional budget tracker that can estimate the cumulative costs before tests are ordered. And what's really key here is that this orchestrated approach is designed to be truly model agnostic. That means it boosts performance across a wide variety of underlying large language models. We're talking models from OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, Grok, DeepSeek, the Llama families. It's not just tied to one specific AI.
Okay, now get ready for some truly eye-opening numbers from this SDBench evaluation. These results are quite surprising, actually.
Yeah, they really are. Let's start with the human performance baseline. A group of 21 generalist physicians from the US and UK with about 12 years of experience on average were tested on 56 hidden cases from SDBench. They achieved an average diagnostic accuracy of, well, a sobering 20%.
20%, wow.
Yeah, at an average cost of $2,963 per case. Even the single highest performing doctor among them only reached 41% accuracy. Now, it's important to remember these are designed to be incredibly difficult cases, meant to challenge even seasoned experts.
Okay, fair enough. Then we have the off-the-shelf commercial language models tested on the same cases. GPT-4o achieved 49.3% accuracy at a slightly lower cost, around $2,745. OpenAI's O3 model reached an impressive 78.6% accuracy, but, and this is a big but, at a substantially higher average cost of $7,850 per case.
So what's notable here is that clear correlation. Higher accuracy often came, hand in hand with higher costs because these models tended to order significantly more tests.
Right, they were accurate but maybe not efficient. Now for the star of the show, the MAI-DxO, the orchestrator. When paired with that same OpenAI O3 model, MAI-DxO achieved an astonishing 80% diagnostic accuracy. That's 4 times higher than the average of those generalist physicians.
4 times higher. That's a huge leap.
It really is. And it gets even better, right? Because it wasn't just about accuracy. MAI-DxO also significantly reduced the diagnostic costs. For instance, MAI-DxO using the O3 model, without a budget constraint, hit 81.9% accuracy while cutting the average test cost down to $4,735. That's a massive reduction from O3's baseline of nearly $8,000. When they configured it for maximum accuracy, an ensemble version of MAI-DxO reached 85.5% accuracy, while still keeping costs at $7,184, again, lower than the baseline O3. And for those really focused on efficiency, a budgeted MAI-DxO configuration achieved 79.9% accuracy at a remarkably low cost of just $2,396. That's actually lower than the average human physician's cost in the study.
Incredible. Better accuracy and lower cost.
Exactly. And here's a vivid anecdote that really brings these technical advantages to life. Consider a specific case involving a patient who had ingested hand sanitizer. An off-the-shelf O3 model, just running by itself without the orchestrator, got fixated on the idea of antibiotic toxicity. It then went on to order expensive imaging, like a brain MRI and an EEG, and ultimately led to an incorrect diagnosis at a high cost of $3,431. Now, in stark contrast, MAI-DxO, thanks to Dr. Hypothesis and especially Dr. Challenger working together, proactively considered in-hospital toxin exposures really early on. The panel specifically asked about hand sanitizer ingestion, which led to the patient confessing. This then prompted targeted confirmatory testing, like a toxic alcohol panel. Result? Correct diagnosis, and a total cost of only $795.
Wow, that's a powerful example. It shows the structured, team-based reasoning versus just, an unfettered, less precise approach. And what really stands out across the board is how MAI-DxO's structured reasoning proved remarkably model agnostic. It consistently boosted diagnostic accuracy across all the tested foundation models by an average of 11 percentage points. It truly acts as scaffolding for weaker models, helping them overcome limitations. And it imposes useful discipline for even the more capable ones, preventing those common errors like anchoring bias or just ordering too many tests. This systematic collaborative thinking seems to be what drives its superior performance.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture then? This research introduces SDBench as this incredibly robust way to evaluate sequential clinical reasoning, really pushing how we assess AI in medicine. And it demonstrates that thoughtful orchestration of AI, like MAI-DxO, can establish a new sweet spot, what they call a Pareto frontier, for both diagnostic accuracy and medical cost, meaning we can potentially achieve better results with greater efficiency.
And this brings us to a really crucial concept: superhuman performance. Traditionally, doctors specialize because medicine is just too vast for any one person to master completely. AI, however, challenges this long-held idea by demonstrating both broad and deep medical understanding. It effectively combines the generalist's range with specialist's depth. It can potentially navigate an incredibly wide array of conditions while still possessing or simulating a specialist's detailed expertise.
That raises a really profound question, doesn't it? When we're evaluating these cutting-edge AI systems, should we be comparing them to individual physicians or maybe to entire hospital-like teams of generalists and specialists working together? The answer to that question will undeniably help shape AI's future role in healthcare.
Of course, like all research, this study definitely has its limitations. We should be clear about that. The NEJM cases, while diagnostically challenging, are also specifically chosen because they're great teaching examples. They don't represent the everyday prevalence of common conditions. For instance, there aren't any healthy patients or, simple benign syndromes included, so things like false positive rates weren't really measured here. Also, the cost estimates are approximations. They don't include all real-world factors like say how invasive a test is, or patient discomfort, or wait times. And crucially, the physicians in the study were restricted from using external resources like search engines or consulting colleagues, which they absolutely would do in real-world practice.
Okay, good points. But despite those limitations, the implications here are truly vast, wouldn't you say?
Mm.
AI, augmented by this kind of orchestration, could significantly augment human expertise, helping to mitigate clinical workforce shortages globally, especially in underserved areas. These cost-effective strategies could allow health systems to impact more lives per dollar spent, particularly in resource-limited settings where every single resource counts. And maybe down the line, it could even enable direct-to-consumer tools like advanced smartphone-based triage, provided, of course, that robust safety and regulatory frameworks are thoroughly in place. That's a big if.
Absolutely. And it's really important to emphasize that this is cutting-edge research. MAI-DxO is not yet approved or ready for clinical use. Future work will need extensive real-world validation, creating diagnostic data sets that truly mirror routine clinical practice, and probably incorporating other data types like medical imaging to further enhance accuracy.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Consider how AI's ability to seamlessly blend both breadth and depth in clinical reasoning. A combination previously thought pretty much impossible for a single entity might fundamentally reshape not just how we diagnose, but how medical knowledge itself is acquired, disseminated, and applied worldwide, potentially democratizing access to high-quality care on a scale we've never seen before.